Alright, so here's the deal with Worldwide Edition. This game came out on April 5th, 2003 in the United States. Yes, that's right, it came to English speakers first. It came out 2 days later, the 17th, everywhere else. If you're unfamiliar with this game, or if you're like me and confused this game for World Championship 2004 for literally years, then here's the short version. This game is essentially a paid update to Duel Monsters 6 Expert 2. Some people have asked if I skipped that game, and well, here is your answer, diligent viewers. I didn't really want to cover Duel Monsters 6 on its own, because so much of it is utilized in Eternal Duelist Soul that I would probably tread a lot of similar ground. Meanwhile, I knew that we would get to Worldwide Edition, Stairway to the Destined Duel eventually, so really it's a great way to talk about both games and what they brought to the fold. There are a few changes between these two versions, and we'll talk about those here for sure, but Worldwide Edition is sort of the more definitive experience for this game, at least in my professional opinion. Not only is it localized and translated into 6 different languages, it also had a simultaneous, almost, release worldwide. This wasn't super common for video games at the time, especially things born from Japan, where localization was such a big part of the import process. So, my plan here is to cover the promo cards you could get in both games, and then talk about the gameplay offerings for both and how they differ from each other. Sound good? Great. Let's begin with my favorite segment, the promo cards. And we got at least 6 of these bad boys this time around, so let's get cracking. Duel Monsters 6 Expert 2 contained Toon Dark Magician Girl, Exarian Universe, and Guilford the Lightning, with a limited release of the game offering Des Volst Golf, which would in turn become a prize card for SJC 2005, the Shonen Jump Championship, in the US. For some reason. It was mostly a normal release in Japan since its debut as a promo card there. Toon Dark Magician Girl and Guilford the Lightning are mostly good for memorabilia, but Exarian Universe would actually go on to become a staple card in its respective format. Now, it just so happens that DM6 also had 2 V-Jump guides published with it that came with promos, just like the good old days. These cards were Temple of the Kings and Mystical Beast Circuit. Temple of the Kings mostly works with Circuit, but just so happened to have a line of text that allows you to activate one singular trap card on the turn it was set. So that's kind of fun. Worldwide Edition in the US and Italy saw the inclusion of 2 extraordinarily impactful game pieces in the form of Sinister Serpent and Harpy's Feather Duster. Both of these cards would sit on the Forbidden and Limited list for years, with Duster only returning very recently after spending most of its life banned, and Sinister Serpent had to be issued an errata before it could return. Valkyrian the Magna Warrior was also included in this promo set. I mean, he looks cool, right? Other international releases would see the second wave of Dark Duel Stories promos, which is the Salamandra, Acid Trapple, and CRU lineup. Alright, so what is Worldwide Edition bringing to the table? I mean, gameplay-wise. Since we're talking about both Worldwide Edition and DM6 in this video, just assume I mean both versions unless otherwise stated. When you start a new game, you have to select a starter deck based on color alone, which includes red, green, and black. What is this, Magic the Gathering? These decks actually have some bespoke predetermined cards in them. The black deck contains one of 2 sets of monsters, one of which is a full set of Exodia, and that's what I picked for the playthrough you see in this video, by the way, as the B-roll. Should have looked that up beforehand, it's terrible. The red deck contained one of 2 sets of powerful trap cards like Torrential Tribute or Imperial Order, and the green deck contained one of 2 sets of spells like Nobleman of Crossout or Pot of Greed. Keep in mind, this is all just 5 cards you're getting of the total deck. The rest are generated out of a set that is far more random. The game itself operates like this. You can move to different sections of Battle City to duel different characters from the anime. Once per in-game week, you'll receive a magazine with 5 free wastes of time, trading cards. According to legend, you can sometimes get a Blue Eyes out of this magazine, but that feels like a long shot. The best I ever got out of these was Dark Magician. After fulfilling certain conditions or getting over a certain point threshold by defeating duelists and winning the weekly tournaments, you gain access to additional packs to choose after beating a duelist. There are also some special packs only available for winning the in-game tournaments, which are only bi-weekly or once monthly. You can also earn special packs by competing in the Target Duelist event, in which you are given 2 duelists to defeat, and if you do so within a week, you earn a special pack. Speaking of the packs, even though this game was the worldwide edition, they still localized out the Japanese pack art and replaced it with generic card art. Not only is this incredibly boring, it also makes it impossible to remember what kind of cards are in each pack, so you very often get a lot of duplicates, especially after dueling a lot. One neat thing that exists in both games is the Limitation Tournament. These essentially ask you to participate in a match with a deck comprised of cards only conforming to a certain type, like Dragon, Warrior, things like that. When you win, you actually unlock one of each card of that type that you didn't have before, so it's excellent for collecting each of the 1,000 or so cards that are programmed into the game. DM6 had the superior dueling interface, and so it was fully lifted to put into the Frankenstein's creation that is Eternal Duelist Soul, which itself is the international version of Duel Monsters 5, if you remember. Consequently, Duel Monsters 6 never really brought its way over here. However, the updated version of the game, called Worldwide Edition Stairway to the Destined Duel, would be released, worldwide. One major change was actually freeing up the password system. Literally. DM6 would charge you duel points to use a password, and if you put it in wrong, it still took your 500 duel points, by the way. But Worldwide Edition costs nothing. You're still limited to a single copy off each password, but that's usually enough to create a computer stomper, I'm gonna be honest. Additionally, there was a secret feature introduced in Worldwide Edition, in which you could get cards with alternate arts by taking the card password's first 4 numbers and adding a 0 after each. For example, you can take the password for Blue Eyes and add zeros after each of the first 4 digits and get its way worse art. Neat! This is also available for Tiger Axe, Celtic Guardian, and Thousand Dragon, just to name a few. In case you were around at the time, you would actually recognize most of these arts as the one used in the TCG packs for the Millennium packs. Speaking of arts, some of the more notoriously censored localized cards in the TCG are featured in this game with their original arts, like Dark Magician Girl and Harpy Lady Sisters. It's like the beta test for the Lost Art promotion before anyone even thought about it. There were also some cards straight up removed from DM6 that were no longer playable. That includes cards like Last Will, which has been banned from competitive play here for years, and Scapegoat. Funny enough though, the Scapegoat token is still programmed in, you just can only see it with a glitched card. There are also some other interesting cut things, like Masked Beast and Mask of Restrict being coded into the game as the accompanying monster behind Loomis and Umbra for their sprite art when you lose or when you have a special event, but they just don't trigger. They're one of the only people that just doesn't have one. But they're in the game. I wonder what went wrong there. One thing that was lost in Worldwide Edition are that in Duel Monsters 6, some duelists had a special line that would be said when they activated their ace card. Worldwide Edition doesn't have this at all. However, Stairway to the Destined Duel also doesn't have the password glitch that prevented you from getting around 20 or so cards from Duel Monsters 6. So I guess it's an equal trade. This game is programmed very strangely in some instances. For example, in DM6, a few duelists like Yamayugi, Mokuba, and Seto can start with a specific, devastatingly powerful hand that allows them to bring out powerful cards and guarantee a board breaker or resource-generating top deck like Regeki or Premature Burial. This is supposedly not present in Worldwide Edition, but I've had some different experiences. In terms of a story, there is a brief scripted sequence that occurs after defeating each of the ghouls once. You defeat a possessed Taya, and some random ghouls, and then a possessed Joey, and before finally facing Merrick. After everyone is defeated there, the ghouls appear like normal duelists, and there are no additional scripted story encounters like that. Completing Merrick's pyramid also unlocks the ability to participate in the limitation tournaments that I mentioned before. There are some interesting character encounters baked into the game, such as talking to Mai while Joey is in the same area, will result in him interrupting the conversation and dueling you instead of Mai. and vice versa. Same story for Mokuba and Seto, as well as Bakura and Merrick once he's unlocked. There are some fun interactions in the game to unlock duelists, such as Mokuba, who can only be encountered after you lose 10 times, or 5 times in Worldwide Edition. Brutal. There's also Bandit Keith, who only appears after defeating everyone 10 times. Also brutal. You can actually unlock Pegasus the same way you do in DM5 or Eternal Duelist Soul by getting a copy of Toon World, and that's always a fun touch. Ultimately, this is by far one of the most successful games so far at replicating the playing of actual Yu-Gi-Oh! And it does some really interesting things when it comes to framing how the game proceeds. Some of the later World Championship games will, not do this, but we'll get there when we get there. Duel Monsters 6 actually utilized the official May 2001 limited list for the purposes of playing the game. That's right, this early in the game, no cards were ever banned, just limited or semi-limited to 2. Prime examples include Pot of Greed, Delinquent Duo, Cyberjar, and Mirror Force. Worldwide Edition would use an updated limited list. But also because some of the card removals from the game itself, there are other factors affecting the meta for this game. However, in pay-per play, the OCG was going fairly strong. For one thing, the May 2001 list was actually only the second one ever, with the first limited list being issued in January 2001, and that thing is interesting unto itself. However, the important note for this game is, you may have noticed, Worldwide Edition came out in 2003 for the whole world, and that this game is an update to DM6, which was made in 2001, almost 2 years prior. These games both adhere to a forbidden and limited list, so which one does Worldwide Edition conform to? Well, I'm not exactly sure. It sure seems like the cards that are limited and semi-limited conform to the January 2003 list, but the OCG had way more cards than any other region at that point, and those are not programmed into the game, so I'm not entirely sure, but it seems to be that one. Tournament winning decks in Japan 2003 were basically along the lines of, yeah. Now, remember, Legacy of Darkness had been out at this time, as the World Championship in 2003 was held on August 10th in Japan. Worldwide Edition only contained up to Labyrinth of Nightmare, since it was largely a facelift of Duel Monsters 6, and it creates this weird time loop of a fake format with a future ban list for a previous format. Don't tell another Yu-Gi-Tuber about this, though. It'll be 5 minutes before they plan a whole series around exploring the depths of this fake format. Fun fact, though, it is reported that at the World Championship for 2003, they actually held side events in which people competed in Worldwide Edition Link duels for what I assume was some kind of prize. So I guess someone already has thought about it. From here on, we're going to take a close look at where the physical card games were at competitively when I talk about the World Championship games, so look forward to more of this. Worldwide Edition is such a cool entry into the franchise, and I hope everyone understands why I had to pair it with its former self. Despite being essentially a paid update to DM6, Worldwide Edition manages to create a more streamlined experience that doesn't have quite so many game quirks that puts the computer at a huge advantage. It also openly rewards players for having physical cards by unlimiting the password system, which can only be a good decision. Just a quick note about the music, as this was a facelift of the game that would eventually be cannibalized to make Eternal Duelist Soul, many of the tracks are the same. But that doesn't mean they don't still kick. Overall, Worldwide Edition and its predecessor Duel Monsters 6 Expert 2 really proved the point that simulators could be just as enjoyable as an adventure or role-playing experience like what was offered before. They just had to take the game more seriously. And as we move forward, we will see that they do. But before we talk about any more real Yu-Gi-Oh!, our sights turn to a significantly less real kind of Yu-Gi-Oh! So buckle up, everybody, because the next games we'll be talking about are the Power of Chaos games. I'll see you all in the next one.